I'm here today with Patrick Spencer.
Pleasure to be on the show.
I met you through Instagram.
So yeah, I do a lot of content on Instagram and try to just be truthful to my message and push the content out. So I'm very, very glad to hear you like it.
Yeah, if you could sum up that message.
Yeah, in a nutshell. As you kind of know, and as I'll tell the listeners, my whole life's view is really the Spartan way, right? The last 5 years of my life has been one great endeavor to publish this book, which is actually about the Spartans. They've very much been my life's inspiration. I've just always really admired who the Spartans as a people were, this, warrior race and never surrender mentality. We have one life and one shot at this, and we're not coming back. We're not getting it back. And so I think, I'm just really obsessed with leaving it all kind of out there, not holding anything back.
When you were when do you remember first being exposed to the Spartans?
Yeah, no, that's a very easy question to answer. I was always a history buff growing up, and my obsession with the Spartans is not an historical one. It's a people thing. It's like I am a history buff, and that's sort of where I got my first exposure to them. But there's literally something about them as people, not as historical figures, but as people and the way they lived. I was like 13. I was a teenager, I guess, and I got that first exposure, and I'm like, oh my God, who are these people? I have to learn more. And
a lot of people might not have seen your profile, your TikTok, but I'll just tell everybody and then they can look at it themselves. You are a insanely fit person, and a lot of your content is you working on being like that kind of disciplined fit. Are you able to see Spartans and like other types of people?
absolutely, yeah. So for me, a lot of it does start with kind of the training discipline. But no. The Spartan mentality is far beyond the physical. And that's actually a really, really important thing to talk about. It really is, I would say, the encompassing of, I guess, what you would call all three facets of the human being, mind, body, and soul. One way I really look at the Spartans and what a Spartan really is the perfect embodiment of the physical and the philosophical. That's a big thing I strive to be, as the philosopher as well. So it's a great question you ask, because yes, it's the last misconception that I would ever want anybody to have about a Spartan and what somebody who tries to live that lifestyle is that it's purely physical. It's far beyond that.
I feel like there's like three directions I want to go here.
Mm-hmm.
One pet peeve that I have when people say real men and then they fill in the blank. Just for you, I feel like you're like the embodiment of like the warrior archetype. There's also the king, the magician, the lover, and that's all kind of different people, like scientists and people that might not exactly match that masculine ideal, like the nerds and the more creative types, the artists and the softer type of people. I would love to get your take on that.
I could say so much, and I'm gonna have to try to nutshell it, because I think that's something I could talk about a lot. I follow a lot of the same alpha male type personalities. It's funny because I kind of have the same pet peeve. I would maybe say this, that I am a huge believer in the balance of the divine masculine and feminine. I don't buy into this. And I know where a lot of them are coming from, but I don't buy into a lot of this over masculine hype. Yeah, a lot of these guys I hear are obsessed with, because men have become, I think, more effeminate relatively in our modern world, but I think a lot of these guys have taken it too far.
Yeah, sometimes trying to swing back the other way.
Right. The pendulum can swing too far, and I think we need a balance. And it's funny because, talking about my content and what I produce, I don't really stress, the masculine or the feminine. It's not even about that for me. For me, it's about being the best human being, that if you are in alignment with, I talked about the Spartan being the both the physical and the philosophical. Well, this is kind of the philosophical coming out of me. I really believe that if you're not in balance with both, that you're not really, you're not where you need to be. And that I'm a big believer in living your truth, as cliche as that sounds. So for me, it's not necessarily a matter of masculine versus feminine. I mean, as men and women, we are what we are. And I believe that if you live in your truth, and that if you go as hard as you can in whatever you're endeavoring to do, that the rest will take care of itself. That I don't, those are things that come along as they will if you're living in your truth. And as a man, you're a man. As a woman, you're a woman. You're going to naturally be predisposed, in certain ways. There's nothing you can do about it. And I just don't believe in trying to force anything. So I think it's
Well,
it's something that needs to be natural, sort of, if that kind of answers the question. I know it's tough.
I think that what you said earlier about allowing everybody to be exactly the way they are
Hmm.
is kind of a definition of what you were saying earlier about everyone has to discover and live their truth. I can't define that or make that a box. I have to let everybody kind of figure that out. On the more masculine side of it, you can allow people to be who they are.
I think so, 100%. And I think that, kind of trying to define what I mean, honestly, truth is like the consummately philosophical topic. What is truth? And we don't have to go there, but I think simply enough said, yeah, just to let everyone be who they are, and the rest will take care of itself.
Men, especially men who do find themselves on the more typically masculine side of it, feel kind of like they're having to stand their ground and protect, like in this era of toxic masculinity. I do get it in a way, and I do think that's very important. And I do celebrate classic masculinity for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, again, it's just about being in the middle, because you're totally right. Masculinity it is an important thing, as is femininity. And again, in our modern day world, I think I said this a minute ago, masculinity is something that's been jeopardized. I just think that, again, you talk about the stance that certain men have taken, and dug their feet into the ground and said, no, we're
Yeah.
defending masculinity. It absolutely, totally valid. It needs to be defended. One of my favorite words is perspective, that ability to see things for what they are and see the big picture. And I think, this isn't a masculine or a feminine thing. I think if we just, as human beings, hold on to our perspective, things start to get a lot clearer. But I think we lack perspective a lot of times, and that's just one of my favorite. I think we need perspective.
I think one of the problems is we are so caught up in our ego that tries to make it everything right or wrong. And when you can allow things to be as they are and observe them for a while, sometimes it's not so obvious.
That's
Um,
very, very true. That a lot of times black and white are a lot more gray than we. And I think I think it's funny. I think that's an interesting analogy. Like, I think things are ultimately black and white, but as human beings, I think we gray them up so much, and that's why we need. It's not just you. It's not just me. It's all of us in this thing together, and we're all kind of a part of it. And together, we've take a step back to kind of dissect the black and the white from the gray.
that stepping back is allowing yourself to contemplate something. And just that buffer, I think, is what allows us to love. When we take that step back and contemplate, our mind is wired to judge things right or wrong in order to protect us. And that goes back to running from the lion in the jungle. But if we can
Exactly.
learn to override that system and say, I don't need you to do that for me right now. I need to consult with this deeper wisdom that I have and decide.
I think, I talked about perspective being one of my favorite words. Humility is another one. And I think a lot of what we talk about, what any of us human beings could talk about philosophically, I think at the end of the day, I try to take a very Socratic approach. For those, out there who aren't too familiar with Socrates, Socrates was the ancient Greek philosopher who said, the only thing that I know is that I know nothing. So it's like this ultimate humility that no matter how much we think we know the truth, this is a
Yes.
big damn world we live in. And it's not to sell ourselves short, because as human beings, we really truly are capable of so much. But with that kind of footnote established, as the small little human beings we are in this massive world, there's a lot I'm not going to say that we don't know and understand, because I think we can know and understand it, but it first requires that initial step of humility, again, of stepping back, letting go of some of the arrogance, the preconceptions, the misconceptions, and stepping back and getting in our humility and saying, okay, let me actually look at this. I don't know everything. And it's a lifelong pursuit. I mean, this is nothing that you and I will answer right now, but I just think humility is a massive one. And so, like, no matter how much we talk about it and try to delve down into the answers, that this ultimately is something we do every single day. We wake up and fight the same battle every day. And again, that's the Spartan mentality. Is just constantly grinding, constantly trying to get better. And I think humility is just like for the audience, humility is a big, big word I would stress.
It's the only thing I'm really drawn to. I've noticed that about a lot of my favorite. I look at them almost as friends, but people I've met on Instagram. And one of the common threads is that humility. I feel like without it, you really can't get to wisdom.
You can't. It's no. I'm not going to say anymore. You just hit the nail on the head, and that is literally what Socrates would have said. I mean, if he didn't say it explicitly, that's what he was getting at. That the first, and it's funny. That's actually what he said. That we know him as one of the greatest philosophers of all time, and that's essentially what he said. That if you want to find wisdom, you first have to admit that you don't know jack. That's the humility that starts the journey toward wisdom. So you said it perfectly, that without humility, there is no wisdom. That is the first step.
And I feel like for me now in this crazy world we live in, trust is really important. And if I feel like I can trust somebody, humility always precedes that. Recently I heard, and I wish I could quote it and I wish I knew who said it, but I saw or read a quote that said something about if you really care about the truth, you welcome it being proven false. Anything I have to say, I will take it to the mat with you. We will wrestle it down. And that's a totally different mentality than like an ego based having to be right all the time.
Oh God, I love that you said that. I absolutely love that you said that. So the beautiful thing about truth is that truth always wins every single time. Truth is invincible, it is immortal, it is incontrovertible. If something is true, it will stand the test of time. It will stand every test. And I think this is a lot of one thing I haven't talked about kind of yet is sort of what I call the me versus me battle and walking in your own power. If you are doing those things and you are walking your own powers is kind of like is basically the same thing as living in your truth. If you're doing that, what is supposed to happen is going to happen. You don't have to really try. It's
Yeah.
just natural.
Like if you're getting out there doing the work, discipline, keep taking one step in front of the other, you don't have to do that hustle thing, like constantly trying to sell yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. No, I couldn't agree more. But I think that is absolutely the perfect way to say it. That if you're just taking the right steps that you and who you are in your truth need to do, it's like I said, I think in the very beginning, the rest is going to work itself out. There's no need to force anything. That's a deep philosophical topic that I would love to go into.
Well, when you start your podcast, I'll come on and we can talk about that topic.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, I can't remember what social media it was on, but it was you talking and there was a Post Malone song in the background. And you said a strong arm.
Well, yeah, that was off of TikTok, and yeah, the idea of the strong mind and the strong arm ties perfectly back into what we were talking about earlier about the Spartan not being purely a physical being. What I was saying, essentially, I think simply enough, is that it's literally not as a man at least, and I think this actually applies to women as well, but especially as a man, it's not enough just to be physically strong. I think what I was trying to get at, trying to like diminish a little bit of that excessive masculinity maybe that we were talking about, and trying to get at the balance.
The reason this one stuck out to me is because I feel like this is what I try to teach people to do. And I'm like the least fit person. Like seriously, yesterday I made myself go to Gold's and walk on the treadmill.
That's step number one, believe me.
What I help people understand in the same way, it's all about learning to see. And you can't get there without discipline. Somebody told me one time, only the mind and body need to be redeemed. Through the discipline of our mind and body, we allow that to be.
That is, oh boy, you might have just struck the core of like our human existence. That's the idea of the authentic self.
It exposes the authentic self that's always there. It's just like under these layers.
Right, of everything that we've ever been exposed to, every lie we've ever been told. I mean, God, it's a million things. This whole time I've been talking about living in your truth. That's essentially the wording that I haven't used, is the authentic self. We all have one. And ultimately that is what I really believe that's what this all comes down to, finding who you truly are and just scraping away all of the layers of whatever you've ever been exposed to, all the lies you've been told. It's honestly, it's the inauthentic self. We don't live in a world really where we're encouraged to be that authentic self, where we're encouraged to be us. live in a world where we're expected to meet, I don't want to say standards, but appearances and have this job and this title. And yeah, going back to the mind and the body, I think that's why I'm so obsessed with my physical training in the first place. Is it's a discipline. It's like I try to stress this at times. Like it's not about having big muscles. Like I could almost care less. Like it is a discipline, and especially the harder you go with it, to go in the gym, to go in your backyard, wherever you train at, and it takes discipline. It is something that you have to make yourself do, and you have to go through to the end with it. And there's just no, like with anything we do in life, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to do it. And I've put myself through some of the hardest grinds physically. Like, I mean, I know what it's like. I can respect anybody who puts themselves through that grind. It's ultimately, it's what you said. It is a discipline to get ourselves to the authentic self. It's funny because, like, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about it the way I do, but I honestly think physical training is something that can take us closer to our authentic self.
In my day job, I work with people, and the thing that I'm trying to do is help them learn how to see. And the only way to learn how to see is to start to discipline your mind and body. One of the first things I ask them to do is just learn to sit in silence for a few minutes. And then you start to observe your own inner system. And the mind and the body are really there to protect you, your true self. And they're pre-programmed with certain things, just like our body knows how to do things without us learning them. And then we get all this conditioning on top of that. And so at a certain point in your life, you have to learn to override your system so that you can live from your true self. So I can't believe every thought that I think. I can't allow myself to eat everything that comes across my plate. It's learning to override the system so we can live from that true self. So I get what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, I totally. I think the only other thing I could say, or like maybe another way I could put it, I'm personally a big believer in two forces or two voices inside of us all. Perhaps I talk a lot about darkness and light. This is a really deep, tough one. You talk about overriding the system. I think the way you do that is by listening to the voice of truth. It's that inauthentic self, that inauthentic voice inside of us that talks to us, that takes us deeper into the pit of inauthenticity. But I think it is the moment that we begin to listen to our truth, to the authentic voice inside of us, can override that system. That's what got me thinking about when you talk about overriding the system.
One thing that caused me to reach out to you, and I think this ties in with what you're saying, is your sense of vision. And to me, that is the thing. So you establish that vision based on your true self. That's your word.
Uh,
And then every dark thought or everything that comes across, you judge it in relation to that vision. Is this in keeping with my vision? And that's
uh,
how you discipline yourself and override the system, so to speak. But that comes from working and doing that work, vision work. And that's what I sense from your Instagram that you're so good at. You have a very distinct vision.
yeah, I mean that means the world to hear. That's it, vision and truth. Absolutely. No matter what we do, no matter how strong we are, no matter how much we train, no matter how much we discipline ourselves, it's always there. The only thing you can do is fight it, right? And then that's like you talk about my vision. Like I just kind of live to fight. It's not that there's never a moment to step off the accelerator, but I think just simply enough, I would suffice it to say, like, the fight never ends. When we learn to love our fight, basically when we learn to love the work, right? Because I think, like, what kills us, like, what do you see people doing every day, like going into their jobs that they hate? The reason people end up being unsuccessful is because they don't like what they do. And I do, when you learn to literally love the work, when you learn to love your process, again, it goes back to living in that truth and that authentic self. Like, it just happens, it just flows, and that is what I try to do.
That is the key, I think, understanding what your vision is, what your truth is, and then living from there.
Yeah, and you have to be kind of uncompromising in it. And a lot of people will see. This is where it gets tough because then, like, a lot of people will kind of hate you for it. It's a very adamant kind of mentality, and a lot of people just don't get it. And a lot of folks are going to expect you and want you to societally conform rather than be your authentic self. And that is a conversation unto itself. You have to be uncompromising with it in a way, because the minute that you relent is kind of the minute that you lose that authenticity.
I didn't want to get away today without allowing you a moment to pay respect to Kobe. When I looked at your TikTok page, there was a tribute to him where you did 24 like push-up like moves.
Yeah, burpees. It was just a little something for him. Yeah.
Along with the audio that you have playing behind there. It's the first time I cried. I cried for that man. It did give me that moment of like collective grief. I know that we lost a treasure and he was a great contributor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'll definitely take a minute because he is, oh, he's worth a minute and more. I mean, that's move. First of all, it's moving to hear that that I was able to move you in that way, and ultimately that he was able to. Look, as simply as I can put it, and God, this is tough because I'm not just saying it because he just passed. He literally was one of my. There's a few guys in my lifetime. Kobe Bryant was one of those guys. I just make no mistake, I cried too, and that's a very hard thing to make me do. I don't cry. He molded me. I would honestly call him an incarnate Spartan in the modern day world, who literally would settle for nothing. We talk about that vision, and he was a rare breed. He had a knack for pursuit. Like, at the risk of sounding arrogant, it takes a lot to impress me to do that. I just literally mold myself after the guy, and I think that what you see in me, all the things that you've mentioned that you've kind of been able to see from me and dissect from me, those are a lot of reflections of Kobe. He was a guy who wanted to be nothing less than the best, the champion at all costs, the humble, and just I think he embodied every trait that I love and respect. And I truly, yeah, I mean, I'm heartbroken and probably always will be. No way for me to find the words to say how much I love that man. And I didn't know him, and that's the crazy thing.
I've felt that way about people before. I completely understand. I wanted to read, you had as part of your story on Instagram today, something from Men versus Mediocrity that
Yeah,
said, killer instinct is the ruthless determination of a man to win and succeed will last beyond his lifetime.
that was Kobe. I mean, that is the perfect tribute to Kobe, that we are what we do in this moment. And kind of like every hero, every legend who has ever been created, forged, made, it's because of his actions. We are what we do. I think there's a lot to say about the idea of immortality, and that's kind of what that post is getting at. Every person like that we remember, that it's because of what they did something that is indelible in our hearts and our minds, and they'll never die. And that's the one maybe greatest comfort that I have with Kobe, is that I know he's not dead. I know he's still here. I know he always will be.
Yeah, I believe too that some people get it at a certain level. It's almost like a gift where you can give your life for life. And it's so rare and wonderful when we see it.
I would, yeah, sorry, I would interject real quick and say that and I think that's exactly what Kobe did. There's a saying, I got to get it right here. There's a saying that I love, and I think it's exactly what Kobe did. I think it's what every legend does. And that is that your purpose in life is to find your gift, and then your duty is to give it back to the world.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
That would be, yeah, to me, that would be kind of the ultimate summation of, it's not just us, right? Like, it is this whole conglomerate of humanity. And if it's just us as individuals, what the hell are we doing? It starts with us. I referenced the me versus me battle, but it starts within, starts with you fighting the internal battle, getting into your authentic self. You have to do the work first yourself.
That is my main message. And we'll have this for another session. But when you see all the world falling apart around you, you still have to go within, get yourself right first so that you will have something to offer. Well, I feel like are making their mistake right now. They're so concentrated on what's happening outside of themselves that they're not useful.
That will absolutely have to be the next topic of the next podcast, because that is it. Literally, what else can we do other than fight the battle within? I just can't say it any better. It starts within, because what else is there? I mean, I think, can we be worthy to the human race? Like, it's self work. That's truly where it starts.
This has been so delightful for me, and I am leaving this on the table with a ton of mystery still because I can't make my mind understand how someone who is still in their 20s has achieved the wisdom that you have. And again, that might be for another episode, but I just want to thank you for being here and sharing some of that with us. And I wanted to end with giving you a chance to tell us a little bit about what you're working on and maybe tell people where they can contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best place to contact me is probably going to be through my Instagram. That's Truly Spartan. Website Truly Spartan as well. All handles are the same: TikTok, Facebook. Instagram's going to be best place to find me, contact me. I think there's two major, and honestly, there's one big thing we left out of the conversation. I'm also training for the CrossFit Games. For anybody who's not familiar with what that is, it's literally the competition for the fittest man on earth, fittest man and fittest woman. I am currently training for that, as well as March 19th, publishing my first book, An Eternal Truth About the Spartans, historical fiction. That pretty much is my life. I just honestly think, and I mean, again, you kind of see Kobe there. Like, I think in some way or another, I'm trying to do something that the world will remember me for, some way that I can. Again, we talk about starting with the self work. I'm trying to be the best me that I can be and achieve the most that I can, so that I can give it back to the world. And I don't know, hopefully some way make a difference, hopefully some way influence someone. But I think, those are the two big things that I'm working on. So I haven't made it yet, but I'm damn sure trying to.
Well, you're giving it everything that you have. And I think one of the best ways we can make a difference is to model for people what's possible. And you giving your all in the way that you do, it shows people that it's possible. So I hope that you'll keep it up. And I really look forward to seeing your book come out, and congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't plan on relenting at all. And talking about trying to be the model, that's really all I want to do. And again, that goes back to living in your truth. And if you follow the steps, the rest will fall into place. I'm just trying to do the steps myself, and hoping that even if I can just influence one person, just one, that would be mission accomplished.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing what is to come for you.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.